everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the MLB Swing for the Fences show here on the Run Pure Sports YouTube channel. It is Sunday morning. We're talking today's 10-game baseball slate. Football Sunday is coming up in less than a month now. Bryce, we got, I think 2 more baseball shows after this, and then 3 weeks. We'll be doing these shows Sunday morning, breaking down the NFL, but still baseball to talk about for the time being. How you doing early on the Sunday morning, Bryce?
I'm doing wonderful. I had a big bet on Duplessis last night, so that was fun to see him get the finish. He's one of my absolute favorite fighters. The first card I ever went to, I had him by knockout against Whitaker in Vegas, and that was absolutely electric. So I've been a big fan ever since. But yeah, I mean, football's right around the corner. We get week 0. There's 4 college football games next week. So we'll have you guys covered for all that. And it's kind of the transition period between like baseball and NFL, and I kind of like when NFL starts with baseball because, you get some people that make money in NFL and, pour it back into baseball lobbies and whatnot. So yeah, it's a really fun time. And, the fall is always the best for sports.
Yeah, no question about it. Football season around the corner. I've gotten pretty into college football the last couple of years, and it makes the NFL can be kind of more fun too because you watch all these guys in college football for the whole year, and then you get to you have some better opinions, I think, on some of the rookies coming in. So we normally kind of start these shows these days with a little football talk, but we won't go too far with it. We do have 10 baseball games to talk about. Yeah, MLB Sundays have been good. And we'll try to make it another good one today. We do have some rain concerns in some of these games, so we'll talk about that. I do think they should be fine for the most part. But without further ado, let's jump into it. Boston, Baltimore, going to kick us off on this slate, the 1:35 Eastern time start time here. Cutter Crawford, Albert Suarez, 2 righties. Crawford going for the Red Sox. Suarez for the Orioles. Going to be hot and humid in Baltimore with winds blowing out. So obviously the lopsided park here. Tough for right-handed power, but you do have 2 right-handed pitchers on the mound, which I do think brings the lefties from both of these teams into play. High total in this one, sitting around at 9.5. I'll pull up the weather here, Bryce, but what do you see initially from Red Sox and Orioles?
So in terms of weather, we'll talk about every game like it's going to play. I think at worst it's a delay, and I'm not particularly interested in pitchers in this game. Yeah. If anything, Crawford. I'm only playing one team today instead of my 150. So neither of these guys would make my main team. They're not even in consideration here. We'll get to some of the better pitchers later in the slate. If I was playing massive MME, I would probably leave these guys in the pool, weather depending, but I doubt I would get a lot of either, probably sub 5% on each of these pitchers. I do like your point about left-handed power here. There's the Orioles lineup. I like the lefties on both of these teams. I mean, 1 through 4 looks really good to me on both these teams. You have Eloy at 3.3, which makes the Orioles stack a little cheaper. And then, you have some cheaper guys at the bottom of the lineup. I think Arias is a decent play as a wraparound at 2.7, obviously. You got Gunnar and Adley in there. So, yeah, I like the Orioles a good amount. They're definitely in consideration for my main team. There's a couple offenses that I want to play today, and I think I had written down 4 offenses that I consider to be fairly popular that I really want today, and the Orioles are one of them. The Red Sox definitely fall into that bucket as well. I think this lineup is better with Cassis in. You get the lefty stack at the top of the lineup. They don't really have a cheap player like the Orioles do to help jam in some of these stud pitchers with them, which makes it a little more palatable to play 3-mans as opposed to 5-mans here. But I like both sides of these games for hitters, specifically lefties. favorite players would be Devers and Gunnar, obviously, but I think Eloy and Urias are really good for cheap here.
Yeah, shortstop's loaded today. Good spot for
Absolutely
Gunnar.
stacked.
Gunnar, Bobby Witt, and Ellie De La Cruz. Three of those.
Yeah, I'm hoping Gunnar goes underowned compared to Bobby and Ellie, because like if you can get a discount, like an ownership discount on Gunnar against those guys, I think that's a really good spot to be in.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. I think he will. I think a lot of people are going to go to the Royals. And
I think so as well.
Yeah, we'll get there, of course, in due time. But I'm with you on Gunnar. I think he's an awesome play. I will say some real pinch hit risk for some of these Orioles lefties. The Red Sox do have 3 lefties in the pen, 2 of whom are fresh, or relatively fresh anyway. So Cowser, O'Hearn, and then Holiday are all somewhat of pinch hit risks here, specifically Cowser and O'Hearn, I believe. So, I still think they're playable against Crawford. They're going to probably get 2 or 3 at-bats at the least, can do their damage there, both with power and all that stuff. But you got to be aware of that. And then, the Red Sox side actually might like a little bit better overall, partly because of that pinch hit risk for the top of the Orioles lineup. Suarez has pitched well this year, but, I don't think he is a pitcher that you need to avoid. He has had his bad starts along the way as well. And we know what the damage this Red Sox team can do against right-handed pitching. Getting Casas in there just makes it all better. They got Tyler O'Neill in there. That top 4 for the Red Sox, you're going to pay for it, but much less pinch hit risk for those guys overall. The numbers don't necessarily bear it out, but I do think Crawford is the better pitcher of the 2, kind of in the, just a general talent type of sense. So I like the Red Sox quite a bit. The Baltimore Orioles do have the better bullpen. One thing to go, if you like the Orioles bats, the Red Sox pen has been atrocious for a lot of the year, but especially over the last month or so. And kind of that middle of the Orioles lineup, Gunnar, Eloy, Adley, Mountcastle, I think those guys are safe in this game from pitch hit risk. They kind of like that little 3 through 6. You throw on a Jackson Holiday down there in the 7 hole at 3.6K as well. So definitely in on this game for offense. I'm not going to get to either of these pitchers in my 5 lineups personally. And I just don't think they're really worth playing unless you're playing a ton of lineups. I'm with you. It would be Crawford over Suarez. And then finally, the weather. I'm with you, Bryce. Looks fine to me. Right now, I'm going to go ahead and proceed that this game, and I honestly think all the games on this slate are going to play without much, if any, issue. I don't think this game will have a delay, but if it does, it should be brief. And I do think they'll get this game in just fine. So if you like this game, I certainly would not back off it due to the weather. Let's get to the next game on the slate. Washington Nationals, Philadelphia Phillies. Taijuan Walker, Jake Irvin, another two right-handers on the hill. Kind of know what to expect from these two for the most part. Walker at this point is really not any good. I think the Nationals are interesting here. They too will have to deal with a tough bullpen with Philadelphia, but I do think they can do some damage off of Walker at least to start the game. And then Jake Irvin going for the Nationals. Been a bright spot for them this season. I don't have much interest in playing him against the Phillies, though. And another game, Bryce, where I'm not really super interested in either pitcher. It's another game for bats. Another game that's going to be hot, humid, wind blowing out. It's a hitter-friendly park anyway in Philadelphia, and will play especially like that today. So I think we're on another game here where the bats are where we want to focus our attention. Over to you, Bryce, for Nationals and Phillies.
Yeah, I do think this is the biggest weather concern, especially with delays. And I don't want to play these pitchers anyways. And the weather concerns just have me totally off the pitching. So yeah, I mean, I would even X these guys out in 150 personally. I don't really think they have the upside to get there today. Interesting that Bryce Harper is getting a day of rest here. So, a little bit watered down of a Phillies lineup, but it does make them more affordable, to stack up and whatnot. You get Stott, Marsh, for sub 4K, and then you get some really cheap bats at the bottom of the order, which I do consider like Stevenson and Stubbs to be pinch hit risks here. But yeah, I mean, they're cheap in a wraparound. I actually like the national side of this game.
Yeah, me too.
I think they're going to go like way lower owned, and they're probably my favorite, like completely under the radar team here. They're pretty cheap. Like, you know, you can get Cole and Ruiz for, 3.2K each. Abrams is going to go completely overlooked at shortstop with how loaded it is. Like, he hasn't been as good as these other guys, obviously, but, you get him at, sub 5% as opposed to, how loaded shortstop is. I think that's pretty solid leverage right there. And then James Wood has really impressed me recently, and Luis Garcia he's been one of my favorite plays this season. Period.
Mm-hmm.
With the stolen bases, and no one ever plays him. So I actually like a Nationals 3 or 5 man a lot here. Not that I don't like the Phillies. I would just rather be on the field, or like I'm not going to play them on my main team. I'm considering the Nationals more than them. If I had 3 teams, I'd probably play the Phillies on one of them and the Nationals on one of them. And then I would want to be over both offenses in the MME. And, if, people might shy away just because like it looks like it's going to rain, I think there might be a delay at some point, but I think we get 9 innings here for bats.
Yeah, nothing on the radar at all right now for this game. Would be, it's hot and humid, so you can get some pop-up storms. But again, I would be very surprised if they're not able to complete this game. I'm not playing either of these pitchers, and I'm definitely not waiting, at least right now, we're over 2 hours away from first pitch. But I would be surprised if the weather is going to take me off of any bats in this game. Yeah, which Nationals do the damage? Lee Price asks. So Walker profile is much worse against left-handed hitters, which is most of the guys you want on the Nationals anyway, right? Abrams, Wood, Ruiz, Garcia, all swinging from the left side. I think those are your best bets. But yeah, Alex Call mixed in there is cheap at 3,200. And then don't sleep on Andres Chaparro, rookie first baseman for the Nationals. He does swing from the right side, but he's 2,300. He was traded over from the Diamondbacks, I believe, at the trade deadline. Hasn't done a ton so far, 19 plate appearances, but has looked good, kind of plate discipline-wise, and showed a lot of power coming up through the minor leagues, really hitting well down on the farm over almost a full season down there. So I do think he is a legitimate big league hitter. Super cheap if you're, trying to fit in the studs, which there's certainly some good ones today. And so Chaparro, you can put in there. The big problem, this Philly bullpen is scary and rested. They've got like 5 or 6 really good arms. They've got 3 lefties. Taijuan Walker's not going to go deep into a game anyway. So we're probably talking about 4 or 5 innings out of him. And then this parade of, just shutdown relievers that are going to come out of the Phillies pen. Probably going to be enough to take me off of the Washington bats as my main stack. What I really like is like the, first 5 over or something in this game, or, Washington to win first 5, Philly to win the game, something like that. I think makes a lot of sense as a bet. But if Philly's had a bad pen, I would be really, really high on the Nationals. But, if they do enough damage and they're way ahead in the game, certainly you could avoid those arms for the most part. But Phillies are probably going to put up runs too. And I just think, even if Washington scores, there's a good chance they see a lot of the good Philly arms out of the pen. So probably enough to take me off of them as a main stack, like I said. But do think they have success against Taijuan Walker for sure. And then, the Phillies bats look good too. No Bryce Harper, who would have been an awesome play on this slate. But, I do like the Philly bats more so, largely, frankly, because of the bullpen situation, the differing bullpen situations. Bad one for the Nats, awesome one for the Phillies. I think the second half of this game should go the Phillies' way. But, it should be a relatively high-scoring game, especially early, I think, between the Nationals and the Phillies there. Brings us to Pittsburgh and Seattle. This one in Pittsburgh, of course, again, mild weather concerns here. Jake Woodford going for the Pirates. Pitched well in his last time out against the Padres, but I do think this guy is one of the worst starting pitchers going in the majors right now, which is saying something as we near the end of the season and teams are rolling out some pretty bad rotations for the most part. But Woodford, certainly a pitcher to target against. The Nationals, or the Mariners rather, did get Julio Rodriguez back recently. They do have a better lineup, I think, than normal out there today. So they're a little bit interesting, I think, are the Mariners. And then George Kirby pitching for the Mariners. Like all Seattle pitchers, not nearly as effective on the road. But he does get pretty good matchup here against the Pirates. I don't think I'm going to get to Kirby. He's certainly in play, but I do have a few other pitchers ahead of him. And I wouldn't mind playing some of these Pirates bats as one-offs, trying to get home runs against Kirby. He's not really someone I like to stack against because he doesn't walk anybody. It's hard to get big innings. But he does challenge hitters with the fastball and could certainly give up his fair share of home runs. What's he given up? 16 home runs on the year. 13 of those have come on the road versus just 3 at home. So I do think guys like Brian Reynolds, O'Neill Cruz, maybe a Rowdy Tellez make some sense trying to pick off one-off home runs against George Kirby. And then, like I said, I think a full Seattle stack is certainly in play here. Bryce, your thoughts on the Pirates and the Mariners?
I have pretty similar thoughts. Seattle, I think they play better as five mans. They're very cheap here in this spot. It's always nice to get them on the road out of Seattle. Not like Pittsburgh's a great hitting park, but it's infinitely better than Seattle. So their prices get depressed a bit, and they do have a good amount of upside here. You get Julio. I know he's back in the lineup and whatnot, but yeah, I think it's a pretty solid spot for them. I don't think they're going to go owned here. I agree with you on Woodford being absolute trash. I don't want anything to do with him. Kirby, on the other hand, I'd probably play around 20%. I don't think he's going to make my main team. If I was playing 3 max, I'd consider him on one of my 3 teams. Pirates just kind of want to pick off, one-offs or, like a 2-man or maybe even a 3-man stack. They're going to be completely unowned. I just don't think Kirby's going to be super high owned compared to some of the other pitching options on this slate. So I don't think the Pirates are an absolute leverage spot here. There's a lot of games on the slate, and I just think there are better spots to go to. I do prefer the Nationals slightly to the Mariners here, but I think it's pretty close. I'd have them both around, 5 to 10% GPP. And both are under consideration for my main team. I would like to have a Mariners stack if I was playing at 3 or 5 max for sure.
Yeah, and we talked about how loaded shortstop is, right? With Ellie De La Cruz, Bobby Witt, Gunnar Henderson. That's going to mean O'Neill Cruz. Pittsburgh's going to be low owned overall, but nobody's playing the 5.2K for O'Neill Cruz with those other guys out there. Kirby, like I said, he does give up power. A lot of it comes against the left-handed bats for the most part. And then also you can really run him. He's given up 17 stolen bases this year, which is a lot for a pitcher who, never walks anybody. He doesn't put that many guys on first base. So base runners have been taking advantage of George Kirby. Just another point in the column for O'Neill Cruz if you're trying to get a little bit different. Might be something that I try to do. Again, I'm not going crazy with the Pirates here, but O'Neill Cruz does provide a little bit of a discount from those other top shortstops and is, one of the few shortstops left, Bryce, that could match Bobby Witt or Ellie De La Cruz if they have a big game, right? O'Neill Cruz could still put up his own 30 ball and match those guys. So I do think he's an enticing contrarian option on the slate. And, I almost never play the Mariners. I like them quite a bit here against the Pirates, who have a pretty bad bullpen. Obviously, a great matchup against Woodford. The hitting conditions look pretty good here, better than normal for Pittsburgh. Hot, humid, some winds blowing out, and obviously the full 9 innings for the Mariners guaranteed. So I'm sure they'll burn me. Haven't played them much, like I said, but I do like the Mariners bats quite a bit here, and then specifically Reynolds and Cruz on the Pirates side. I'm with you. Kirby is a fine play, but I'm probably not going to get there, and absolutely zero interest in Mr. Woodford. Yeah, some questions in chat. That's good. Yeah, we'll get to them as we kind of go along and usually get to the game in question. But that's probably enough for Seattle and Pittsburgh. Let's get to Kansas City and Cincinnati. Another game that we have to at least pay attention to the weather, but another game that I'm really not overly concerned. 9.5 total in this one, no surprise, in Cincinnati. And another game, basically all the games we talked about have close to the same weather, 80, 85 degrees, a lot of humidity. And for the most part, winds blowing out. It should be a good day for offense around the league. This one, we have Brady Singer going for Kansas City. Royals have a kind of a Mariners-esque thing going on where almost all their starting rotation has been way better at home in Kaufman than they have been on the road. It certainly applies to Brady Singer, who's been almost twice as effective at home than he has away from home. He goes into one of the better hitters parts in the league here in Cincinnati, and the ball should be flying. We should see, I think, some power in this game. So no interest, again, in either pitcher. We'll get to some pitchers that we like coming up here as we go along the show. But I'm not playing Singer. I'm not playing Abbott. And really, it's the bats on both sides of this game that I like. We talked about Witt, Ellie De La Cruz in passing. They are fantastic plays. Expensive, but fantastic plays. And I do think this game is going to come in pretty highly owned. Not surprising for a game in Cincinnati with a 9.5 total against two mediocre pitchers. I think in general you want lefties versus Singer and righties versus Abbott, playing the platoon advantage there against both pitchers who have pretty significant platoon splits. So good one here. Bryce, what do you see between Royals and Reds?
I don't really have interest in any pitchers. Honestly, I do think they have enough strikeout upside where they would make like my pool in 150 and you're getting tons of leverage on the bats here. This is, in my opinion, definitely going to be the highest owned game overall bat-wise. Great American Ballpark, good hitting weather. It just normally comes in super chalky. I'm likely fading this game on my main team. I just think there are some other good spots to attack, and just kind of hope to mitigate some of the runs scored here. I just think it's going to be too high owned, especially in the higher stakes stuff. If I was playing 150, like I'm obviously not fading it. Like I'd probably have 10% of each team. Don't have a huge lean on which way to go. I would probably prefer the Royals. I just think that I'd rather attack Abbott with righties than Singer, but that's just a very small lean. I'd probably play it straight up. Favorite bats here are obviously Witt and De La Cruz. I think Spencer Steer's always a good play. I think he always has tons of upside. Renfroe for 3.5K. I think he's going to be fairly chalky against a lefty. Furman is cheap at catcher. I think he's going to be fairly chalky. And we'll get to this Houston game in a second, but they have a super watered down lineup, and I figured they were going to be high owned. I think like the cheap plays are all going to be pretty much on the Astros here. That will be chalky. So you might get a little bit of an ownership discount going with this, but yeah, I think these two, the Astros and the Phillies, are the chalk on the slate.
Yeah, I think that should prove true. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like the first thing I did when I looked at the slate without looking at ownership or anything like that, it's like you take the big overview glance at it. It's like, yeah, the Royals stood out to me, right? Like Garcia, Witt, Perez, Renfroe, Fermin, even the guys at the bottom of the order, Hampson, Blanco, are very cheap. I mean, Blanco's coming off a 40-point game yesterday. So I do think you're going to get heavy ownership on the Royals. I certainly get it. But on a slate where I think many offenses are in play, I might try to get a little bit different on my main teams today. Of course, you can go to the Reds as well. You do really want the lefties in general against Singer, so that would be Ellie De La Cruz, Friedel, Candelario, Fraley. That 4 through 6 Reds stack makes some sense. I guess you could connect it with Cruz and Steer too. So I like both offenses here. I'm just worried a little bit about the ownership on a slate where I think there are many, many different ways to go. So I'm certainly going to mix these guys in. I don't know how heavy I'll end up going on Royals and Reds, but certainly a good game for offense. And I think you make a good point about the pitchers. If you're trying to get contrarian, trying to get leverage, they do both have a fair bit of strikeout upside. And if they do go off, you'll take down a decent portion of the field if your pitcher can shut down the opposing team's stack. So that does make some sense from a game theory perspective. Obviously, most likely outcome is it doesn't work out and they don't pitch super well, but we're going for the outlier outcomes anyway. So I think Singer and Abbott do both make some sense on this slate. Let's get to the Diamondbacks and the Tampa Bay Rays. This one, of course, indoors in Tampa. Looks like it's going to be a bullpen-ish game for Tampa Bay. They will open with Drew Rasmussen. He's coming back from a long-term injury. Really good pitcher when he's healthy. I bet they're trying to get 2 innings out of him here, maybe 3. He is on full rest. And again, was a starter back before he got hurt. So I'm guessing they're going to try to stretch him out a little bit in this last month and a half of the season. Should be Tyler Alexander following Rasmussen, who has actually pitched pretty well recently. I don't love attacking this bullpen game with the D-backs bats, honestly. Probably going to let cross most of those guys off my list. And then Merrill Kelly, who also has been injured, has made just 1 start since coming back. He pitched well, though, relatively well against the Phillies. Just 2 strikeouts, but did get 11 ground balls. And maybe most importantly for considering him today, did throw 85 pitches in that start after, 3 or 4 months off. So Kelly, he has pitched well this year when he's been out there. He was pretty good last year, and he does get a pretty good matchup against a not that dangerous Rays team who has decent strikeout rates to right-handed pitchers. So I think Kelly, pulling up ownership here. Yeah, Sabres got him around 15%. So I do think he is a pretty good option, honestly. Expect him to pitch well. And I'm mostly off of the bats here. We've been kind of on the bats on all the games we've talked about so far. This is one where I'm not playing most of these guys. And really Merrill Kelly's, to me, the primary option on the slate overall to play in DFS. Bryce, your thoughts here on D-backs and Rays?
I want nothing to do with this game in general. Tampa Bay bullpen game, I don't want to attack. The Tampa Bay pitching prices make absolutely no sense to me. Yeah. These guys should be like 5K. Even in my 150, neither of them make my pool.
They're not playable.
No, they're not. Don't play them. Don't like bats here. Not under consideration for me attacking them or attacking Merrill Kelly. I don't love Kelly. I think he's an okay play on the slate. I'd probably play him around 15% in my 150. He wouldn't make my main team. He wouldn't make 3 max teams. He might make a team if I was playing 5 teams. And that's pretty much it. I think we can spend our time elsewhere. Sounds like neither of us really have interest in this game, and hopefully for good reason.
Yeah, we've been on the same page. I guess Kelly would be maybe a slight disagreement. I think I have a little bit more interest in him than you do, but I totally get it with Kelly. We'll see where ownership comes in. We're going to get to Houston and Chicago White Sox next. Framber Valdez, SaberSim's got him projected at 45% ownership. I think it's going to be higher than that. He's relatively cheap at 8,900. It's not that great of a slate for pitching. He's pitched absolutely lights out over the last, you got to take it all the way back to June to find the last, bad Framber start. And his last 4 starts, he has been an absolute monster. The strikeouts have been up. He's throwing 100-plus pitches the majority of the time. And, of course, he gets this White Sox team that we are just targeting literally every day with opposing pitchers. And then, of course, stacking against whoever the White Sox are throwing out there. Terrible bullpen behind Kai Busch, who is not a good pitcher. The Astros rolled out kind of kind of their B squad lineup today. 9 right-handed hitters against the lefty Kai Bush. And outside of Altuve, none of these guys are over 5K. And much of the lineup is under 3K. The last 5 hitters in the lineup, Whitcomb, DeZenzo, Dubon, McCormick, and Pedro Leon. Obviously not a murderer's row of bats there, but all of them sub 3K. Going to be a real easy team to get to, and I do think that's going to lead to a lot of Astros ownership. It's hard to argue with it. They've got a team total between 5.5 and 6, highest on the slate. Great matchup, cheap prices, massive favorites. What are the Astros? Minus 400 or something? I mean, what are you going to say? People are going to load up on the Astros today for good reason.
Yeah, it came down a bit after Jordan's not in the lineup. It's a pretty watered down team, but they're super cheap and going up against an absolute awful pitcher. I want nothing to do with Bush. Astros, I likely want to be over. I struggle with them today because they're so easy to click in with like Framber and make a good rest of your lineup. I kind of want to fade them on my main team. I would definitely play them, in MME. And, if I had 3 teams, I'd definitely play at least one. I'd probably play an Astros 5-man and an Astros 3-man on separate teams here. They're just so easy to get to today. I kind of wonder how much pinch hit risk some of these guys have. I think the top 4 and Dubon and McCormick are absolutely safe. Yeah, I mean, it's just a really easy stack to make. I think they're going to go highly owned and for good reason. I don't want anything to do with the White Sox batters. I really like Framber today. That's not a contrarian take. I'd rather play Framber. Like, I'm going to play him on my main team and hopefully get different at bats. It is kind of the way I want to attack this game. No interest in the White Sox here, pitching or hitting. So, yeah, I mean, Astros are really good cheap plays, but you're going to be eating some pretty heavy chalk, especially on the cheap guys and like Altuve, just because second base doesn't look great overall to me. So, hopefully they just hit in some singles. I'm likely going to be fading them on my main team. I just think the ownership's going to be, absolutely through the roof. So, yeah, I'm playing chalk pitching on my main team. So, you got to get different somewhere. You can't just play straight chalk, or otherwise you should just be playing cash games.
Yeah, I hear you. If you're looking for a reason to fade Framber, due to the ownership would be the reason, right?
Yes.
The White Sox do profile a little bit better, at least against lefties. Not well by any means, but their strikeout rates do go down a little bit. They've got at least a few bats who can hit relatively well against left-handed pitching. Now, obviously, Framber, very good pitcher. He's been on fire. What do you think Framber ultimately comes in owned in the flagship and in single entry? It's got to be really high.
Single entry, I'd assume 55 to 60%. Yeah. The flagship, probably 45 to 50.
Yeah, makes sense. So very highly owned, rightfully so. I haven't decided if I'm going to play him on my main team yet, Framber, but it would really strictly be just an ownership fade, and you just never know. You maybe hope someone else outscores him, because he's probably going to put up 15, 20 points at minimum, you would think, against this White Sox team, just trying to fade the big game. If you don't go that direction. A couple notes on the Astros. Obviously, a lot of new names in there. Shea Whitcomb, he's hitting 5th, 2,000. He's the minimum price. He is really, really productive in the minor leagues. AAA this year, 25 home runs and 26 steals for Whitcomb, 22% above league average there. So he can hit a little bit. I've mentioned DeZenzo. Again, he hasn't done much so far, but he was tearing the cover off the ball down on the farm as well. And you mentioned the pitch hit risks. It's certainly there for guys like Whitcomb and DeZenzo and Pedro Leon, I think, are the big 3. But if this game goes as we and everyone else thinks it's going to, and the Astros are up multiple runs and Framber's cruising, they'll probably let these youngsters just play the whole game and not bother with pitch hit. Teams do like to give their players a full day off if they can from time to time, this seems like it would be a prime spot to do it on a Sunday afternoon, where most likely the Astros are going to be up 2-3 plus runs for most of this game. So I wouldn't be shocked if we saw this Astros starting lineup for the most part just go ahead and play the whole game. And, if they do want to pitch in guys because they're up big, it'll probably be guys like Altuve, Pena, Diaz, Myers, guys who could use a little time off themselves. Wouldn't be shocked to see the bottom of this Astros lineup, which is very cheap. Just go ahead and play the entire game. I've certainly got quite a bit of interest there. And I'm not going to, I don't think, even go for leverage bats against Framber Valdez. It would be Robert, Vaughn, and Vargas that I'd be most likely to play. But I think you can do better than trying to go against Framber. Even if you're fading him, I don't think it's worthwhile. I certainly wouldn't play more than one or two on any given lineup. Let's get to the second half of this slate. It is Cleveland and Milwaukee up next. This one in Milwaukee, two righties, mediocre righties, frankly with very similar profiles. Ben Lively going for the Guardians, Colin Ray going for the Brewers. Again, two, I guess, maybe slightly better than league average arms. They both do struggle, though, against left-handed power. And, yeah, I mean, I think both these teams actually profile, I think, pretty well against the starting pitcher, but they both have awesome bullpens who are both rested. This is another one where I think we could see runs early on and then not much as perhaps these stacks kind of fizzle out in the second half of this game. So, in particular, especially if the Brewers had a bad pen, I would like these Guardians lefties, but as it stands, I think there are better spots to go. Not a ton of interest in either pitcher here for me. What about you, Bryce? What are you doing with Cleveland and Milwaukee?
This is, we've talked up a lot of offenses and pitchers, so far. Want to be under on hitters and pitchers in this game. Not going to make my main team. Wouldn't make, any of my top 5 teams. 150 max, I wouldn't take stacks out. I do think these teams have a bit of upside, but as you mentioned, good bullpens. It would take an absolute nuke on this slate for them to get there, in my opinion. Pitchers, I would probably have around 5%. Neither break the bank. You're going to get leverage if you're not playing Framber. I just don't love them here. It's two offenses I don't really like to target pitching wise. I'd probably have them around 5 to maybe 10% absolute max in 150 if I was playing that. And then hitters, I mean, I don't really have like a crazy take here. I'm just simply not going to be playing them. I would prefer them as like 3-mans. If you do have a differing opinion here, if I had to pick out a specific bat here, I think the Guardians have a decent amount of upside. The Brewers do too. It would probably be like Turang and Jose Ramirez would be my 2 favorite bats in this game. Potentially Lane Thomas and Jimenez as well. If you did want to play some guys in this game.
Yep. Makes sense there with Guardians and Brewers. Obviously, Ramirez always in play. He'll be another, I think, relatively contrarian option on this slate. Just people spending at pitcher, people spending up on the big shortstops. Don't think many people will get to a guy like Ramirez, but obviously pretty strong contrarian play there. Brings us to the Dodgers and the Cardinals. Clayton Kershaw going for the Dodgers. He's pitched okay outside of the hiccup against San Diego. Don't still really trust him. I don't really want to play Clayton Kershaw. Not on my radar today, frankly. All the righties in that Cardinals lineup. Actually, I think they are a little bit interesting as a contrarian stack against a fading Clayton Kershaw. And then another good pitcher on the other side, Sonny Gray. Been pretty consistent all season long, getting the job done. Tough matchup for him here, though, obviously, against a Dodgers team that will be without Freddie Freeman, so a little bit of a watered-down lineup. Still not necessarily a team I'm excited to pick on, though, with a 9,200 Sonny Gray. Obviously can play Ohtani. Lux continues to get the job done. He's still cheap, hitting third today at second base. Obviously, if you want to get the trade, that Ohtani bet slug stack looks just fine. And then, Cardinals right-handed power, I think, is at least interesting against Clayton Kershaw. Over to you, Schlong, for Cardinals and Dodgers.
I kind of like the bats here more than the pitching. I think it offers pretty solid leverage, and absolutely no one's going to play bats. Sonny Gray's given us some home runs. I think Ohtani's, into play on every slate. And, if you can get him at lower ownership, simply because he's 6.7K and, there are other bats in much better spots. I think he's a really good contrarian option. Kind of like Dodgers 3-mans as opposed to Cardinals 3-mans. I'm actually looking at a Dodgers 3-man on my main team with Ohtani. So, I like the bats here. I think they're, I think they have high upside and nobody's going to play them. So it's kind of a spot that I like. Conversely, Sonny Gray, I do think he has upside a pitcher. Like, he would definitely make my pool if I was playing 150. I'm just not playing him on my main team. I might play him on 1 out of 5 teams if I was playing 5-max stuff. 3-max, he would not make any of my teams. Kershaw, I've been kind of low on Kershaw in general. He would make my pool in 150, probably about 5 to 10%. Don't hate St. Louis righties. I just prefer the other side of the game. This is kind of a game I want to be over on hitters in general, if I was playing 150. So, I'd probably have, 5 to 10% Dodger stacks and about 5% St. Louis stacks here in 150. And, the Dodgers, I think, are a really good contrarian option today.
Yeah, Ohtani in particular, obviously,
yes,
looks awesome to me. Gray has allowed 20 stolen bases on the year, too, which Ohtani continues to run wild on the bases. 37 steals for Ohtani to go with the 38 home runs. I certainly think you can play other Dodgers as well, but if you just need one, the answer to me clearly, as it often is with the Dodgers, is Shohei Ohtani. I think he's just an awesome one-off. You don't really feel the need, or I don't at least, to get other Dodgers around him because nobody's going to play the Dodgers anyway, and obviously Ohtani can do the damage all by himself, doesn't need any help from his teammates whatsoever to put up 30-plus fantasy points. So Ohtani, I think you might have talked me into him, Bryce. Getting him in my main lineup seems like a good way to go today. St. Louis power, I do think looks pretty good. No guarantee, obviously, but profiles pretty well against Clayton Kershaw. Will be very low owned, as you mentioned. 2 more games to talk about. Toronto and Chicago. Lee asks, Bowden Francis the hero, the cheap pitcher we need? He certainly could be. I was very high on him in his last start. He made some clear changes with the pitch mix. And, I think that was back on Monday, perhaps. I can't remember what day it was. I think it was a free show. But Bowden Francis actually absolutely smashed 33 fantasy points at 5,800. He was 5% owned on that slate. I think I had like 30 or 40% of them. Unfortunately, it was a slate. It was the slate of the Snell Sale monster pitchers duel, so I didn't get as much kind of advantage over the field as I was hoping. But nevertheless, he's looked strong. 2 starts in a row, 8 and 7 strikeouts, and now he gets prime pitching conditions in Wrigley Field. We've talked a lot about these early games looking good for hitting with the weather. This one looks great for pitching with the weather. Strong winds blowing in from center field. Going to be tough to hit one over the fence in Chicago at Wrigley today, which certainly, bumps Bowden Francis's prospects quite a bit. I like him at 6,300. I'm not sure you need the savings today, Bryce, but nevertheless, I do think Francis has a good chance to pitch well, as does his mound counterpart for the Cubs, Shota Imanaga, who has pitched really well at home, and most of his dominant games have come in this type of situation at home in a good Wrigley wind game or cold. A lot of them came earlier in the year. And, it's a Blue Jays team that does put the ball in play. But Imanaga, I think, is going to pitch really well here. I think he's very, very safe, even if maybe the upside isn't quite as high as some of the other expensive arms on this slate. But certainly like Imanaga. I like Francis a lot too. It's just a matter of if you need the savings or not. But I certainly do expect him to pitch well. should be low owned once again, it looks like, for Bowden Francis. Bryce, what are you doing with Toronto and Chicago?
Love pitching here, both sides. Imanaga over 5.5 strikeouts is one of my favorite bets of the day. Toronto's been striking out a ton against lefties. If he can get through, the top of this order, mainly Vladdy, I think he could absolutely run wild here. I actually like him more than Framber today. Compared to ownership, I think Imanaga, I would play around 50% of him, and he will make my main team. I said I was going with shot pitching here with Framber and Imanaga on my main and different hitters. So, yeah, got to get different bats if you're going to play these two as a combo. I want no bats in this game. I wouldn't even play them at 150. I don't think the upside's there with the wind blowing in. If someone manages to hit 2 home runs and beat me, so be it. But I don't think this is even a good game target for one-offs. I just much rather take extra shots on guys like Ohtani or some of these other high upside guys. So yeah, love it, Miyaga. I like Francis a good amount too. I think he's going to be super low owned. He's by far my favorite cheap pitcher today. If you want to be different, you could fade Framber, play him and Imanaga, and then I'm totally fine playing 2 pitchers in the same game. By the way, especially wins don't count for tons on DraftKings, so yeah, it's not something I shy away from at all. Wrigley wind blowing in is really good for Francis too. His issue has kind of been the long ball, so I think it's a really good spot for him. And if I was playing 3 teams, he would definitely make 1. He might even make 2. I would just kind of mix and match. Yaga, Framber, and him. He comes in as my 3rd favorite pitcher overall on the slate at 6.3K. So
yeah. The Sabres team has Francis below 5%. I don't know if that'll.
No, I think he comes in around 10. And I'd probably want to have 30 to 30%, and sounds about right to me. As overall exposure to him. Kind of upset I'm not playing him on my main team just because I think he's a really good option today. But with some of these bats I like, I'm not sure I need to go there.
You certainly don't need to get to Francis, but just playing around with lineups. I mean,
he gets you builds that you can't get without playing him, and it'll if you play him, you're not going to be playing the cheap Houston chalk, so it kind of gets you off the chalky build by playing him.
And listen, it's not like there aren't bats to spend on. We have Ohtani, Witt, Ellie De La Cruz, Rafael Devers.
I think Mookie's even a good spend. I don't think anyone's going to play Mookie here, and if he gets on base, he's likely running against Gray. You could go with the Mookie Ohtani combo is not easy to get to, even with the cheap bats. You kind of need a cheap pitcher too. So
yeah, the more we talk about the slate, the more I'm leaning getting Francis on my main team. Going to be over the field on him for sure, and it just gives you a different build. And the fact that you don't have to do it, right? It's very easy to fit in 2 stud pitchers with all the value on the Astros, and that means it's going to be a route that a lot of people take, right? I think a lot of people are going to go with expensive pitching, cheap Astros bats, fill in from there, and getting you Francis almost necessitate that you're going to have a little bit of a different build. So I do think he is, Francis, the best way to get a little bit different on this slate and still have a good chance to make good lineups. And yeah, Joey, I think Francis is you can use him anyway. I think that he's got a good chance to put up a big game. I mean, he just did it last time out, and in a really good spot here against the Cubs in Wrigley. So I think you can play Francis anywhere, absolutely. Also, I do think he's capable of throwing more than the low 80s pitches he's thrown last 2 times out. Got through 7 innings in his last start, and they pulled him there in a close game. But I do think he's a guy who can throw 90 to 100 pitches in the right situation. Last game on the slate, Minnesota and Texas. Good game for pitching here, I think, in the Dome in Texas. Pablo Lopez going for the Twins. Been a really up and down season for him. Had a lot of chalky blow-up starts, but still a very talented pitcher despite all that. I do think he's certainly in consideration against the Rangers, as is Tyler Mahle, who's made just 2 starts coming back from a long-term injury, but has pitched pretty well in 2 tough spots against the Astros and in Fenway. Got 7 strikeouts last time out against the Red Sox. Only made it 4 2/3 innings, but threw 92 pitches, 16 DraftKings points in that one. Now he gets a Twins lineup that has done some damage recently, but also does have pretty high strikeout rate overall against right-handed pitching. So Tyler Mahle at 7,300, another guy who I think is certainly in play. And then, Pablo Lopez, I think you can consider him as well. Overall, pretty out on the bats for the most part in this game. I will say Corey Seager, another good contrarian shortstop. If you do want to get a super low-owned guy that has big upside, I would consider him at least. But over to you for the last game on the slate here, Bryce. Twins and Rangers.
Not my favorite game here in general. Do have some interest in the pitching here. I'd probably want to be around 15 to 20% Lopez and probably around 10% Mahle. That's, I'm not taking them out in my 150. You still have guys with upside here, but they're not sniffing my main team. I would only play them in, if I had 20 entries, I might play 1 stack of each team. They wouldn't make my 3 or 5 man strategy. So, don't love stuff here in general. We discussed a ton of stuff that we like. You can't play everything, so likely going to be just pretty under on this game as a whole.
Yeah, I think Tyler Mahle is my favorite play in this game overall. I think he's a pretty good option. I don't even hate combining him with Bowden Francis, and then you'll be really different, right? Because you'll be able to spend up on bats that other people won't be able to get to. I do think that's a decent way to get different on the slate. That'll do it for the 10-game slate. Did check the weather. Still looks fine to me. I'm not really changing any builds due to potential rain situation as of now. Obviously, still an hour and a half to go before game, but I do think these games will play just fine. With that, let's get to the fun stuff here at the end of the show. Bryce, I'll throw it over to you for your favorite stack and your favorite contrarian stack.
Favorite stack today? I'm going to go with the Mariners. I really like the Mariners here. Favorite contrarian stack? Probably the Dodgers, with the Nationals coming in a close second.
Yeah, makes sense. Favorite stack for me is going to be the Red Sox against Albert Suarez and the Orioles. I think they could do some damage. Love specifically the top half of that lineup. And contrarian stack, I like the Cardinals a little bit against Clayton Kershaw, throwing from the left side, sub 90-mile-per-hour fastballs. Doesn't really have much of a changeup, so everything kind of breaking into those power bats from the Nationals. Contreras, Pham, Arenado, Goldschmidt, the heart of that order, I think looks pretty good for a contrarian play against Clayton Kershaw. Most important pitcher, Bryce, who are you rocking at SP?
Emiyaga.
For me, I'll be Bowden Francis as my most important guy. Good bag of him. Home run call. Jordan Pintar. He's in Vegas. He needs a home run bet. We don't have the odds in front of us, but who's going yard today?
Give me Ohtani.
Yeah, I like that call a lot. I'll go with Freddie Fermin. Hitting 6 for the Royals, I think, goes yard for you. Should get a good number on him, I would imagine. And then finally, your favorite overall hitter on this slate.
I already went with Ohtani, so I probably should have saved him for favorite overall hitter as opposed to home run call. But we will go with, let's see who I'm definitely going to be playing today. Cal Raleigh.
I like it. I'm going to go with a min price guy for the Astros, Shea Whitcomb. 2K, like what he's been doing at the minor league level. Power, speed, hopefully gets to stay in there the whole game if the Astros do what they're supposed to tonight. All right, that'll do it for the show. We'll be back at the usual time tomorrow, 4:45 Eastern time. Appreciate all you guys watching. Enjoy your Sunday. Good luck in your lineups. And for Third and Schlong, I'm Draft Cheat. We're out of here.